Excuse me for reading from a clipboard, but it's the easiest way to do it for me. Let me get myself organized here. The Upton Police Department was formally organized in 1890. Before that time, there were virtually no public records, with the exception of some early accounts in local newspapers regarding various tragedies, but without reference to local law enforcement involvement. One of the earliest artifacts in possession of the Upton Historical Society is a reward poster dated 1887, offering a reward of $150 for the apprehension of the parties who broke into the stores of C.H. Bull, C.S. Temple, and S.B. Fisk. It was on the night of November 22nd. During the same year, $100 was offered for the apprehension of the arsonist who set fire to the barns of Morris Maroney and Moses Rawson. You know the Rawson estate. Our first police chief was appointed in 1890. His name was William Parsley, and he served for 33 years. The department consisted of constables who assisted the chief in his duties, including walking street patrol on weekends in West Upton Center. Only West Upton Center. The department consisted of, West Upton was the business center of the community and housed the post office and a pharmacy. There were no banks in town, and business transactions were mostly handled in cash. You know what that means. Prior to 1900, the department operated with a zero-line budget. Expenses were submitted monthly for payroll or other associated costs. The Board of Selectmen closely scrutinized the submittal of expenses. As Bill Taylor recently told me, he's been researching the police department because of tonight. It was highly scrutinized. A lockup was constructed in the new town hall that was built in 1884 and was used until the George S. Ball School was converted into the current police station in 1990. The lockup consisted of 2 cells with iron barred doors. I had the pleasure of serving as a jailkeeper and dispatcher during days of the old lockup, basically late 70s to the late 80s. The dispatcher sat at a desk a few feet away from the cells with no protection from anybody walking in from the outside. On one night, a thug who was over-inebriated from a visit at a local bar walked in on me around 1 a.m., leapt over the half-wall counter, and in no time had me pinned against the back wall, telling me he was going to kill me. Somehow I managed to push forward, and I pressed the microphone to call for help, and the on-duty patrolman, Bobby Payne, raced to the station to assist me. The town dispatcher had no protection until the new police station was built. The most common crime in the old days was public drunkenness, for which was an arrestable offense. An inebriated person could be arrested, locked up in the old cell downstairs, and left alone until Monday morning came along and be assessed a fine or simply released at that time. On one particular night in 1893, it was noted that no tramps were in the lockup when a fire broke out in the assessor's room as a result of a carelessly discarded cigar by a member of the Board of Fire Engineers who had met there earlier that evening. According to reports, the smoke would have been sufficient to have killed anyone there that night. Firefighters saved the town hall that night. Chief Parsley was involved in a Keystone-type incident on the evening of July 21st, 1890. According to Milford Daily News, 2 Milford men drove through West Upton in such an intoxicated manner as to attract general attention. In the course of an hour, they raised such a havoc that Chief Parsley was called, and he was able to run them down on horseback, overtaking them at Sharp's Barn, as their buggy was only running on 3 wheels by that time. Their horse showed that it had been unmercifully driven, as big welts stood out all over his body. H.F. Pellet was called to care for the horse, and the thugs were consigned to the cooler for the weekend. Herbert Bagley served as Parsley's right-hand man for 45 years. He was principally involved in many Prohibition raids over the years. On April 26, 1909, Bagley was part of one of the most notorious raids and arrests of suspected gamblers at an Upton speakeasy. Parsley obtained a warrant out of Milford Court for illegal gambling activity at the Chamberlain Place on North Main Street. Basically, I call it Judy LaValle, the Valley home. There was a whole series of stables. Clark's Barn was there. They had surveilled the property for 5 weeks. Bagley could hear the dropping of coins on the floor from outside of the windows. Gamblers would stay up until 5:30 in the morning. A bell had been rigged from the house to the barn to warn the participants of approaching danger. The police cleverly disconnected the wire, confronted the men with cards still in hand, so it is reported. They were arrested for gambling on the Lord's Day and fined $10 each. All that work, 5 weeks, $10 fine, see you later. In 1911, 5 raiding officers of the Upton Police Department, armed with a search warrant, swooped down on Joe Martin's livery stable on Grove Street and conducted a search that resulted in 43 half pints of moonshine found under the floorboards. Martin ran a Pony Express business out of the property and was the principal provider of horses to hitch the fire engine to get the engine to a fire. Martin was exonerated. The responsible party was actually a tenant who, without Martin's knowledge, had been making moonshine at night. I'm going to switch it. Anybody recognize that building? The Bradish murder of 1913. Albert Grant Bradish went missing on October 4th, 1913. He was last seen at his family home, the well-known 200-year-old Bradish homestead, once located just beyond the Old North Cemetery, or the Bradish Cemetery, near the intersection of Westboro Road and North Street. The Bradish family was very well known, their descendants having been influential in the founding of Upton and causing the town center to be relocated to where it is today in 1770, from Grove Street at Menon Street to its current location downtown. They, along with the Bradish family and the 2 families who resulted in the town center being moved, Westboro Road and, no, I'll have to come back to it. That's okay. My backup plan. See, they were complaining because of the distance traveled to meeting. Families were required to go to meeting on Sundays. And you think about the distance to go from the intersection of Mechanic Street and North Street all the way to Grove and Mendon. You know, imagine horseback, walking. You got to leave pretty early to get there by meeting time. And let me tell you, if you didn't show up to meeting, they came and found you to see if you'd be really sick.
Especially in winter.
It's exactly right. So they actually petitioned, and then Warren Street, the Warren family, was built, or the Warren family, thank you, that was the other one. That's how Warren Street was built and named after them to get to the center of town from up on Mechanic Street. Albert Grant Bradish was employed at the William and Knowlton Hat Factory in West Upton, as were Dan Cooper of West Upton and Walter Balcom off of North Street. Bradish, Cooper, and Balcom would become the core of one of the most intense murder investigations in the history of the town. All three knew each other and were considered friends. Balcom's wife, Emma, was unfortunately on the radar of passion for both Cooper and Bradish, and a clandestine love triangle resulted. While Walter was at work, either Cooper or Bradish would visit Emma, and as detailed by Cooper, always through the back door. Over time, Cooper became increasingly jealous of Emma's attraction to Bradish, so he would hide in the nearby woods to observe Bradish coming and going. Rage overtook Cooper one afternoon, and he confronted Bradish near the muddy brook that flowed behind the Bradish family cemetery. It's still there today. Cooper murdered Bradish that afternoon and buried his body in the brook, wrapping his head in a raincoat. For 3 weeks, the bells of the First Congregational Church were rung each day, reminding residents to be on the lookout for Bradish. Through extensive investigation by Upton's William Parsley, Milford Police Chief O'Neill, and State Police Detective Molt, Cooper finally confessed after extensive interrogation. It was on Halloween Eve, and he led the investigators to the site where he had buried Bradish. The news of the finding resulted in the same church bell tolled for a lengthy toll. Cooper pled guilty, being sentenced to 40 years in prison at the Charles Street Jail in Boston. He was eventually commutated from death penalty by the governor of Massachusetts, which changed it to life in prison. Cooper was paroled around 1955 and lived his remaining few years in Milford. In 1982, I explored the site of the murder scene and found the spot where Bradish's body had been exhumed, the outlines of the temporary grave being readily visible even those years later. I took photos of the grave, and they're on file at the Historical Society. I show this picture because this is the site of the Upton Police Station. Technically, it was not the police station in 1884, but it was the home of the lockups. This is around 1985. So, I'll move on to this. There's Dan, 1923. He's a young man in that photo. November 14th, 1914. At 1:30 a.m., Frank Wellman, while making his rounds as a night watchman for the Knowlton and Sons Hat Factory, discovered a group in the doorway of the West Upton Post Office, located in Hotel Pleasant. He flashed his light on them and yelled, "What are you doing there?" The reply was a shot, followed by 2 more. Wellman pulled his revolver, and the battle was on. In those days, the streetlights were cut off at 10 p.m. every night, and only the flashing of gunfire could be seen by area residents. The Yeggs ran behind the Unitarian Church and made their escape down Maple Avenue and onto Rockdale. It was discovered that the West Upton Railroad Depot had been broken into earlier, and that a drill, a pick, and a wrench had been stolen, likely to be used to break in to the West Upton Post Office. That night, they didn't get anything. The first report of someone shot and killed by the Upton police was in June of 1917, when Saverio Romagnoli brandished a firearm at Officer Bagley, who had responded to a call at the Usher Farm on Glenview Street. That's in East Upton. Romagnoli had been run out of the farm by Frank Usher, and the police beckoned and driven to the scene in a Model T driven by Leroy Prentice. Bagley fired the mortal wound after Romagnoli fired shots upon arrival of the posse. Pretty dramatic. This is a picture of the state